Welcome to the Inspiration North podcast, inspiring stories from inspirational people and how they found their passion, their true north. I'm James Eves.
And I'm Michelle Minikin, and this is the Inspiration North podcast.
Today's episode, most of us can be better than we are, with Mary Williams. We talk about how she helps people find themselves quickly, the fear of failure and the fear of success, and the more happy people we make, the better the world is going to get.
Mary works with professionals and high-level talent. These people are smart, successful and doing well. However, they tend to have one or more areas which they know they could improve in. For example, confidence, micromanaging, delegation issues, or just overworking and not switching off. These people want to find balance in their lives. Mary also works with teams, helping them become cohesive. She is solution-orientated and dynamic, whilst being human and relatable. She gets clients unstuck, happy and content. Mary's goal is to enable leaders to find certainty and clarity from within so they create inspirational change in the world. This transformation is underpinned from a background of executive coaching, conflict mediation, cognitive hypnotherapy, NLP, teaching, and she's also a mother of 5 children.
Well, thank you for joining us, Mary.
Thank you for having me.
So, the journey. The journey. That sounds like a movie intro, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about your journey, please?
So, I guess my journey starts in my childhood, and that it wasn't very good. And I came out of it thinking, well, actually just knowing that I needed to improve and clear the damage that had been done. And I don't actually know how I knew that at such a young age, but I did. So from a very young age, I was reading self-help books and going to parenting classes and things like that, and had children incredibly young. So I was 17 when I had my first, literally just after my 17th birthday, and 3 by the age of 21. So I think I went through varieties of counselling, CBT, psychotherapy, etc. And it just always felt like, although I gained a greater understanding of myself, I never actually cleared some of the deeper lying issues that I knew I had. And so it wasn't until I trained as a coach that I then found that really shifted. But even then, there was still stuff that was stuck. And then 4 or 5 years ago, I trained as a cognitive therapist, and that has been a huge shift. Then adding in workplace mediation on top of that, it really cleared my things. So I think I just had a view that most of us can be better than we are. And having taken 40 odd years to find my better self, I'm just really passionate about helping other people find their better selves as quickly as possible. So yeah, I think that's the very quick version of my journey.
Right, we're done now. Let's get the pub.
We're done. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah. So I guess, you know, as you grow up, I think you see other people around you, don't you, in pain, emotional pain, and you know we all want to help, and it's finding out the key, isn't it, for each and every person? Like how do you change that? So for me, finding that I had a skill set where I could do that, it's very powerful.
How did you find the skill set?
I think actually people told me I had it. I don't think I found it.
Okay.
So I think.
But did you listen to what people said? Did you believe that?
I think it took a few people. I think it was a drip feed effect.
Yes.
So, I the very first thing where I kind of came into this field was that I went on a parenting course, and we had to do. So it was run by a coach and a family therapist, and it was experiential learning. That was the first time I'd ever come across it, and I thought, wow, you know, this is like, had a physical impact on me. And so I spoke to her and said, look, I'd really like to do this. By then I had 5 children. She was a parent coach, and she said, you know, you'd be amazing at this. And I went and trained. So I did that and actually worked as a parent coach for a few years. And then, sorry, my mind's gone completely blank.
That's fine.
What was I answering?
we were talking about your your skill set that you
That's
discovered.
it.
People were telling you,
That's
drip feeding
it.
you.
That's it. Sorry, I was way off.
He's good at this.
Exactly. This is really helpful.
Yeah.
That's it. So
keep him around.
So what happened was just, again, through having my clients, I think my clients started to increase my confidence in my skill set because they were saying, you're really different to other people we worked with. Actually, I've had this insight. And then I moved a few years later to work with cancer patients, literally just breast cancer, for a local charity. And I ran little workshops, and several of the people came up to me after workshops and said, wow, you have this amazing ability to hold kind of emotional space in a room. Everyone gets to talk, everyone feels really safe, and you're doing it like from the first, almost the minute people come in the door. And then even the people who ran the charity were saying, obviously we have lots of facilitators in running groups, but I'm watching people at tea break and they're already really bonded. Like, what are you doing? And I was just a bit like, I don't know,
Just being me.
Just being me.
Yes.
And so it was one of those things. And then I did a business accelerator program probably 5-6 years ago. And the guy who ran it, who was incredibly talented, actually sent me an email saying, you've got to be out there doing what you do, and kind of the world needs you. But he said, I bet you're one of those people where people talk and it kind of just appears all around their heads, like what their issues are. And I was just like, oh wow, yeah, it literally is like a sixth sense. It just appears. So I think it was lots of that, and obviously, to be honest, it was lots of clients saying, "Wow, that's life changing." I'm quite evidence-based person, so it was looking at the evidence of my clients changing and kind of going, "Yeah, I do seem to have this thing," and so I believe that every single person in the world actually has, how do I call it, their superpower.
Yeah,
and so I kind of just hope this is mine.
Definitely,
because it's not science, but this is.
So we met through LinkedIn Local, and then you were doing your 100 people in 100 days.
100 conversations in 100 days.
Wow. Busy work.
Yes.
And then I remember talking to you my 100 days. I was sitting in a hotel room in London.
You were.
And I got
in bed.
Yeah, I was in bed. Thank God it was
brilliant.
I was like really hungover. And we had a really lovely chat. And in terms of the evidence base, you came back to me because you saw something in me, and I wasn't in the best place because I was still holding on to some stuff in my past. And literally an hour with you, a couple of weeks later, and a little thing to listen to on a night before going to bed, and my life changed. So thank you.
It's good to see.
Yeah, the impact you've had. I'm like a totally different human. But that's just one, so yeah.
I think that's the thing is, it still surprises me how quickly clients change. And I'm in the room, and obviously there is an underlying process, but the process is loose. It's kind of just, we're looking at your mindset, we're looking at your past, we're looking at your behavior, teaching you a bit of neuroscience. And even sometimes when I come up with ideas for clients, I'm like, hey, maybe you could try this. Even in that moment, it's like my brain's going, wow, that's a really good idea. How did you come up with that? Where's that come from? It really is. And it's
like the universe is delivering the message to you.
It is a bit like that. And it does feel like that. But I think I also feel, lots of people say, oh, I'm very honoured by, this. But I do feel really honoured that people walk in and kind of go, wow, here's my vulnerability. Like, here's where I'm struggling. It's like, here it all is. And like, can you help me? I think there's something very powerful in two human beings coming together. And I'm very honest with my clients. I share a lot of my own stuff, share a lot of my own hardship. And for me, it's it's an equal relationship in the room that I'm sort of saying, I've been through, if not that thing, a similar thing. I'm not asking you to do anything that I wouldn't do. And I'm living proof you can move from, something like lack of self-worth to self-worth. And even sometimes when I reflect on that journey and people say to me, oh, well, you can't really shift that, can you? And I'm like, well, you can. And I know you can because I have. So, but, some clients will move quicker than others. Yeah. But we all have it in us to change if we want to.
No, definitely. And so what are the big issues that people are coming to you with?
It's interesting you say that, because for my book, I had my assistant go through. So when people come to me, they fill in a reflections form, which sort of says, these are my objectives, and it's all about them. So I had her go back through, it was nearly 200 of them that I had still. And fear of failure was the top one. Then lack of confidence, lack of self-worth, family issues, imposter syndrome, but fear of failure top, absolutely top. And I think that is a really key one that really holds people back, because we tend to think of it, because it's spoken about, isn't it, a lot in the business world. But if you look at it on a personal basis, if you're not going to make any decision, if your brain is thinking any decision I make might lead in failure, you're not going to pick the right relationships. You're not going to make the right decisions as a parent. You might not buy the right clothes. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's just, what's the word?
Staying safe.
Yeah, it's just, it's
Caution.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Permeates through everything that you do. So I think, for me, if I'm honest, when clients come, I think of it, this is why kind of the mind architect really was that a lot of coaches and people come in and they'll come into your house. You help you paint it and buy new furniture and pick your colours and all that sort of stuff. But if your house is floating on ice, actually, what's the point? So for me, it's about going underneath. So it's almost like the unseen work. And you're putting in your foundations, and your foundations are things like, actually, you've got to love and value yourself. I mean, that self-worth piece is your key piece. You've got to have your confidence, stop worrying about what other people think about, to think about you. And I'm trying to think what the other one is that I always work on. It's gone. What the other one is.
And there's another one.
Yeah, and there's another one. Can't remember what the other one is.
If you remember halfway through this conversation,
I'll just pop it in. Yeah. Like I told you, I'm a bit like Eddie Izzard brain. but I think it is interesting to me when I work with people, it doesn't kind of matter what they come in with. Actually, pretty much self-worth will be the core issue. Then it is worrying what other people think about you is really key. Your confidence.
So that's what stopped with me. I stopped literally giving a shit. Yeah. So, but it's worrying for people around me. Sorry.
The thing is, if you think about it, we're tribal. You take us right down with tribal. And if you got kicked out of your tribe, you would die, because we hunted in packs and we created safety in packs. Yeah. So we are, on an evolutionary basis, we are programmed to worry about what other people think of us. And that's fine. So for me, I think that we're always going to have that element, but it should be like a 2%. So it's not actually changing your decision-making process. Yeah. What I see is people coming in and every decision, effectively, even if it doesn't present as that, comes down to worrying what other people think about them. So my view of it is, if you go in and put those foundation pieces in, actually then you know how to paint your house and decorate it yourself. You don't have to waste time. So that's what I quite like, is that with me it's fast. It's fast work. People stay on because they want personal development, not because they have to. And I think, I'm turning 46 this year, and quite a lot of my clients are like, I don't have 4 years of psychotherapy. I want to be better now.
No, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So, what's a typical process? You don't have to spill your
secrets.
So, your background is in... Talk us through
my background.
Yeah, a little bit.
So in the beginning, I trained as a teacher, secondary school teacher. I went into that because I thought I loved reading. Well, I do love reading. And I thought, I'll go and inspire children, like these films on telly, to read. And then realised that actually I was having to do discipline and grammar, which was not so cool. But actually, I just realised I was more interested in the kids and the teachers than the actual teaching. So I came out of that, had a whole host of sort of other little jobs while I was finding my way. And then trained as a coach. So I just trained in the beginning just as I hate the term life coach, if I'm honest, but as a coach. And then I thought that was enough. But what I found was, working with clients, there was always a little bit missing. It was almost like, there's something there and I can't quite get to it. But I had good reviews from my clients. So I was like, okay, maybe this is just me thinking there's something there that is not. And then I stumbled into the cognitive hypnotherapy because I was looking for a course that had more NLP in it. And actually my daughter, who was probably 11 at the time, started having night, not terrors, but believing there were people outside her room at night. And she's very sensible, so she's like, I know they're not, but I just think there are. And I'd tried all the coaching techniques, nothing worked. Got referred to a cognitive hypnotherapist, which I was a bit like, hypnotherapy, not so sure. But really trusted the person who'd referred. And I was listening to this woman in the room, talking to her and thinking, hang on, there's a language pattern going on here that's creating change. So obviously when I asked her what she did, she said it's cognitive hypnotherapy. So I trained on that. That was a 10-month course. And it's a joke on the course that I sat with my kind of arms folded at the front going, yeah, prove it. But the proof was in the fact that I started using it with clients and on myself, and was literally having to go, this is just so powerful. And that's how it worked. And then I trained as a workplace mediator, actually, because my partner was being bullied at work. And again, just one of those universe bringing people together that I just ran into somebody who ran courses on workplace mediation. She said, hey, we're running one next week, come on.
That's what we did with the podcast. So I ran into somebody who trained people
Oh,
to do
really?
podcasts and had a podcasting studio, and I was like, dude,
This is a sign. It's a sign.
yes.
So yeah. So now I just combine it all. So process-wise, it's a really interesting thing because I really struggled for the book to pull out my process. In fact, I had to go back and have a kind of one-to-one mentoring session because I was like, oh, it's just all bespoke and it's all in my head. And he was like, no, there'll be key issues. And I realised that those foundations that I talk about, actually those are the key issues, was that I'm working on your mindset. I'm working on where has your past impacted you? What is that emotional baggage you're carrying? But I also teach bits of neuroscience because I think it's really important for us to know actually everyone's brain is doing this thing. It's not just your brain, and it's effectively tripping you up by accident. So I think that learning is really valuable. And then it's kind of deconstructing your behaviours, mental and physical behaviours. So that's the process. But I'm doing that in every session blended together. So it's not a kind of week 1, week 2, week 3.
No.
It's we go by topic. So literally I'll say we're going to look for clearing your self-worth and getting that back up today. So I go straight in deep topics immediately.
Wow. You talk about cognitive hypnotherapy. Is there a difference between that and what we might hear of hypnotherapy? And what is that?
Yeah, so the difference is cognitive hypnotherapy, you're not putting people to sleep. You're not putting them into trance. So it's using linguistic patterns, NLP, Gestalt, it pulls on lots of theories. So you're using a variety of techniques, but you're kind of linguistically embedding them into the unconscious. And it's also very patient-led. So I'm sure lots of hypnotherapists would disagree with me, but traditional hypnotherapy tends to be, and it isn't always, but tends to be quite authoritative. It's, you're going to sleep well tonight. Whereas I never tell my clients what the answer is. What I'm effectively doing is asking them questions which enables their unconscious to heal themselves. So that success rate is much, much higher. Because if I try and tell your brain something and it doesn't agree, it's just not going to do it. Whereas if I say to your brain, what is it that you need to do to get this solution? It will go, oh, I need to do this. So, and some of the things clients have come up with when we've been running techniques, I never would have thought of them. So, it has to be client-led. And I think that's where the success rate comes in. So that's the difference is people don't want to be put to sleep. They don't want to be seen to be out of control. They don't want that. And actually, if you don't need to be. So I think it was explained to me that, how we sort of say, oh, that must be a very deep thing that you're holding on to. Well, actually, if I asked you what you ate for breakfast on 2nd of February, can you remember? No, because you don't need that information.
Probably toast.
Eggs on toast. Because I do eat that every day.
Yeah, pretty much. I like a routine for breakfast.
So the thing is, if your brain is cross-referencing, let's say an old memory, to cause you a problem, it's got to have it quite light because it's referencing it every second of every day. So actually, if you ask in a particular way, kind of where did this start, your brain will kind of go, oh, it's just here. And people say, oh, I can't remember anything, or I don't remember many memories. But then we use this linguistic pattern and they kind of go, oh, it's this. I mean, it's literally that quick quite often. Not that, that's the only technique there is. But so I think, if you don't need to put someone to sleep and out of control, why would you? Because the whole thing should be about empowering them. So for me, it's like I want them to leave able to coach themselves. I want them to be able to have a really clear mindset. I want them to be able to work out immediately, like, what's the physiology reaction I'm having? What's my mental reaction? What is actually going on? Because when you know the true source, I'm actually not angry, I'm hurt, you deal with it and you can deal with it quickly. And then you're just in a really clear mindset all the time. And it sounds awful, but it feels like empty space in your brain. It's nice. A client said to me the other day, he said the difference is it's like logic just drops into my brain. And I thought that's a lovely way of putting it. Like logic drops into my brain. So he said nothing feels that challenging anymore, even in high pressured situations, because I have this space in my brain and I can just go, okay, this is the situation, and it's kind of like the answers just drop in rather than mind chatter, because I think a lot of people have this constant mind chatter. So you're smiling.
So I'm smiling. Sorry. So have you heard of internal family systems? The Dick Schwartz. You might enjoy this stuff. So there's a chap in America. He's a no, he's not a physiotherapist. That's a different podcast guest. He's a psychotherapist, and he's called Dick Schwartz. He came up with this internal family systems model. So it's all very positive, and it's kind of recognizing and naming all the different voices you have in your head. We all have lots of different voices. You know, I've got my dad in there, which is really irritating, and so I did a bit of work with my coach, who's a business psychologist who was learning it. She was fascinated by it. But it's, there's 3 types of voices. They, I'm going to get this wrong now. So there's the kind of the wounded part. It's an exile. Right. The manager. So it's like the kind of, the productive bit. And then there's that more critical. Yep. But they're firefighters. Okay. And it teaches us that all parts are welcome. All parts have positive intent. Yeah, they're there to keep you safe. Yes, about intention. So James and I have been like kind of playing around with that, and obviously with me and my hilarious imagination, I have got names, characters, personalities, what they want. So it's just since Christmas that we learnt about it. It's fascinating how much I can hear a voice go, oh, it's Scarlett, we'll just ignore her. Or Hermione, or obviously they are mostly Harry Potter names. But it has been really handy, and I can hear voices in other people now. I was like, well, that's not your voice. That's not your that's not you talking. Who am I speaking to? So it's been. I think it's the same way of doing something different. Yeah, and I'm not trained. I'm just like an interested amateur so far. So I think we do really similar work on parts. I think the way that I was trained was, I really dislike models, so it was quite hard for me to actually work out what my own model was. Yeah. Because I just think it's so personal. And actually, if you tell me I've got a manager part, you tell me I've got a such and such part. What if I don't? Actually, you've then just put something in. So what we do is we look at the parts that are causing a problem, and then what's the kind of opposite part, and then you break down. Actually, okay, so exactly what you said. What is the part's intention for you? And I think this is something I do in the talk I give. It's about actually it's always a good intention, but it doesn't mean the consequence is good. So I think people struggle with that because they're like, well, why would part of me decide, for me to excessively drink? Well, actually, if it thinks that that's soothing you, then that's its intention, is to actually love and care for you. And so you break it down. But what I like about it is it's the person naming their own parts, and it's the person bringing their own parts together. And actually sometimes creating a new part, or you send that part that's not been helpful off on holiday, but you keep its strength traits. And that's a very powerful piece of work. And I think that voices thing is very interesting. I used to use that with anorexic clients quite a lot. And I have a client at the moment actually who we tuned into her voice, and it was her mum's voice, unhelpful voice. And it is like when you go, oh, that's not my voice. No. You can kind of go, oh, okay, I don't need to listen to that. And I think one of my biggest learnings actually personally was realizing just because I had a thought didn't mean that thought was true or that I had to listen to it. Because we kind of go, that's my thought in my head, therefore it's relevant. Oh my God, I must pay it loads of attention. And actually my therapist is great. The other day actually I was texting her about something, and she was like, you're just overtired. Like, just ignore this voice. Come back to me tomorrow if it's still there. And she was totally right. I woke up the next day and was just like, I was just really overtired, like a small child. But so learning to listen to your voice and go, is that my clear healthy voice or not? It's almost you sort of, I know we're going a bit sort of psychology here, but that kind of transactional analysis with those parts as well. So speak to them like as an adult, not a naughty child or a pleasing child or all the other bad bits, which is kind of having that adult to adult conversation in your head. It's like, right, is this true? Yes. What is this about? But it is just,
I think that's really interesting, because I think when you notice adult to adult bit, you're so healthy. And that, I think that's one of the changes I see in my clients is they come and sit in the room, they go straight into child. And that's why, we all hate the whole, it's all in your childhood. But actually most of it is. But you also just don't have to be in your childhood. So one of the things I really like about what I do is it's, you know, you're not down there being a tourist. Actually, what you're doing is going, what's the part that caused you the problem? Right, in this session, we're going to go in, kind of spot check it, change it, come out again. And I found in psychotherapy, I often came out like, you know, so upset and in tears. Whereas actually now if I do any past work, actually I come out feeling great because I've sorted it in that one session. So I think, you know, it is that child voice. And certainly for me, I genuinely think I was run by kind of little 3-4-year-old me up until I was about 42. And there's a lovely piece of work actually you can do sometimes with those parts where you say, how old are you? And the client will go, 5, you know, and they're sitting there, you know, some middle-aged, you know, 50-year-old, you know, just going, oh, like I'm 5. And it is this 5-year-old part of them that's still desperately trying to protect them. And it's got stuck. So I love that when I see clients come in and they're just doing the adult.
Yeah, well, interestingly, the part that we identified when we were talking has morphed into Hermione. So somebody who's like super,
I love your Harry Potter.
Yeah, super organised, super efficient, can see problems, rational, which is like, whoa, this is new. I like Hermione. She sorts me out.
She's good. Yeah, she's good. And it is that kind of state change, isn't it? And noticing. So I think, you know, I was talking to someone yesterday, and it is that kind of, I want to do this, but it's, for me, the difference is before I would have gone with it, oh, I want to do this, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm just going to, you know, subtly ignore the 2% that's screaming in the corner. This is a terrible idea. And what I'm actually going to do is ignore it and then carry on and do all the wrong thing. And then when it's all fallen apart, then I'll just go, oh, well, you know, I followed my heart and that was the right thing to do. And actually, you realise that, you know, it's pain that way. Pain lies. And then when you have your 95% sensible head that says, okay, we can do this and this and this will happen. Do you know what I mean? You can see the whole consequences clearly. And you've still got your child voice going, or your emotional voice going, oh, but I really want to do this. And you're just like, yeah, but you know what?
Have some chocolate, leave me alone.
Yes, exactly. That's not going to end well, so let's not do that. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I think, I say to my clients, it's like developing a pure honesty with yourself, like a real no bullshit. And, you know, sometimes I get frustrated with the fact that I can't do bullshit anymore because it means I can't do the things I want to do and just do I'm just following my heart, you know, whatever. I'm just going to eat an entire Easter egg without thinking. You know, you're actually sitting there going, so you're choosing to eat this Easter egg then, Mary? You know, and it's that whole pure honesty thing. And I just think when you have that pure honesty, you make the right decisions, because effectively it's like someone else going, is that the best decision for you? And because you're doing it to yourself, you know you're going to have to live with that other voice, knowing that you went against that part of yourself saying, maybe don't go and do that thing.
It's fascinating. It's kind of all of the maladaptive behaviours that we do, you know, overeating, over-drinking, numbing through drugs and sex and all that random shit. You kind of know it's not necessarily a good thing to do.
Exactly.
You do it anyway. It's like, let's get pissed.
Yes, exactly. Let's do this. And I think it's a funny thing, isn't it? I mean, about are we doing the things that we want to do in life? So, I mean, I think I was just saying to you that I'd had this chest x-ray yesterday. That's why I'm coughing today. And I did stand outside the hospital thinking, you know, if I got lung cancer, this isn't going to be good. What changes would I make? And it was interesting because it did make me think the only thing I would do is actually slow down my business drive and purely from an energy point of view to kind of give my body time to heal. But I thought, I love my work, I love my clients, I love the way that my life is at the moment. Even actually there's quite a lot of personal stress in my life at the moment. Actually, I as a human being am in the best state I've ever been in my life. And I just thought, isn't that rather lovely that I can sit there and go, if I was dying, you know, to be very morbid, if I was dying, actually I'm really happy with where I am. And that's where I want my clients to be. And I think I hear so many people go, you know, when I've got this job, when I've done that, when I've sorted out this, or when I've got the partner, or when I've got, do you know what I mean? And actually, you know, life's too short for that. So just, I once said to a business advisor, I said, I just think leaders need to sort their shit out. He was like, that's such a good name for a book. So I was really tempted to call my book Leaders Sort Your Shit Out. But I generally think that of everybody. I didn't.
I feel a bit disappointed.
I didn't. I kind of still want to.
I would totally read that book. I'd be like, that one.
That's the book I'm going to read. Yeah. But yeah, so I think it is that point of, stop bullshitting yourself and just get on with the things that you want to do. You know, people stuck in unhappy marriages and unhappy jobs and, you know, just being miserable, and it's ridiculous.
It is so depressing. Yeah. You know, I hate people wasting their lives.
Exactly.
And it gets me really upset. And just seeing people in, you know, very close family in situations where they everyone knows they shouldn't be in.
Exactly.
But they're just comfortable in their misery. Yeah. It's just so sad.
I think I have a very strong sense of mortality. So I think when I had my first daughter, literally at 13 days past my 17th birthday, I very nearly died. I was literally minutes away. I kind of bled out terribly. And I didn't actually know how close I'd been to dying until I was about 23, when I actually went back to work at the same hospital, and the midwife who delivered me walked in, went absolutely white, and had to sit down.
Oh God!
Because it took her back. It totally traumatised her, which obviously I could help her with now. Yay! But it did make me kind of go, I literally could have just not been here. And then I think when I was, again, around the same age, actually around the kind of 23, 24 mark, I had quite severe precancer cells removed, cervical ones, which is why I'm very pro smear tests. And again, the guy said to me, if you don't have them removed, you're dead at 30. And I think, I'm 46 next month, and I could have been dead at 17. And how many people do you know that die? And my daughter works in a hospice, and she's always saying to me, Mum, there's, a woman in there's 36, or there's somebody in there's 18. And I just think, we do need to have that element of mortality, actually. What are you here to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? And starting my own business, actually, was I didn't want to sit on my deathbed going, I wish I'd tried to do that. And I thought I'd rather do it and have tried and failed. Because I don't really believe in failure, but actually I'd rather have tried and gone, I gave it absolutely my all. Didn't really work. That's fine. Than, I never really did that.
Regret the things you did do rather than you didn't do.
Exactly. And that is so my motto. People can only say no, go and ask people what you want. So I think,
this is why I love you so
much. This is why we need to talk so much more. But it is, I genuinely think everybody should have a sense of mortality. You are not here for that long, so don't waste it. And I think that is a real driver in my work, actually, a real driver, that I'm just like, come on, people.
Chop.
Exactly. Let's just sort this out. And I see really miserable people who look really successful, bright, successful people, high level leaders, CEOs, other people are looking at going, wow, look, you got it all. And they're kind of going inside, actually, I'm a bit suicidal and I'm trapped because I earn all this money. And actually, I'm quite miserable. And, all they're sitting there going, yeah, exactly.
The dog's horrible.
Or they're just sitting there saying, actually, I'm doing really well. And but I kind of think I could be doing even better myself. So it's like, well, why aren't you doing something about it? That's my last foundational pillar. You have choices. Yay. So make them. See, it would come back. But we do. We do all have choices. And I think that I was saying something to somebody the other day about a choice that they've got. And I said, but you did choose that, because they were blaming someone else. And I said, you could have done this and this and this, and you chose not to. You chose to do this. And it's that kind of pure honesty thing of, you got to front up to the choices you've got. You can leave your job. You could downsize into a shed somewhere. Do you know what I mean?
Go live in a tent.
You could go live in a tent. But there are actually choices. You can really, you can leave your relationships. Your kids will be okay. You're here once. Really, you should be out there spreading good and looking after your own life and enjoying it. And I just think the more of those happy people that we make, the better the world's going to get.
No, definitely.
That's my view.
James, have you got any questions? Because I'm just literally, you're just watching a conversation.
You're very quiet over there.
I'm a good listener. No, carry on. I'm just reflecting on what's being seen.
So the whole kind of choice theory stuff, it's really hard for people to accept that responsibility.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of, I'm fat because I ate so much crap. There might be some genetics in there, but it's pretty much my fault. It's like, well, no, we'll blame adverts, and then we'll put a tax on sugar, and then it's like, really? So why do you make Coke more expensive? It's a nice treat now and again. But it's that. My life, looking around, is my responsibility. I made these decisions. This is where I created this. And it's a scary place for people to live in, I suppose.
I think it is. Because ultimately, if it then, something you've chosen then doesn't work, most people have that fear of failure on top, so they won't do it. Whereas I just don't believe in failure. So for me, it's just like, well, I'll try this. If it doesn't work, I'll go try something else. I literally just don't have it.
Have you come across the fear of success?
Yes. So I had the fear of success.
Yeah, I've got a bit of that.
So I realised I had some coaching a few years ago, and I said to the woman, I think I've got fear of failure. It was around the business and really growing it. And we talked, and she said, you've got fear of failure, but you've also got fear of success. I like to walk a fine line. Mm-hmm. And I tell you what it was. I realised that all my life, I'd always just had this absolute feeling I could really do something quite incredible in the world. But my priority had always been to be a better mum than my own mum. So I'd always prioritised my kids. And suddenly here was this business that I was really good at, and it was growing, and I loved it, and it energized me, and I loved that kind of alter ego that was, you know, mum / crazy amazing businesswoman.
Yeah.
And so I just realized that oh god, my brain's gone blank again. What was I just talking about?
Success.
That's it, fear of success. I'm sorry. Do you know what it is? This is my bad choice, is that I stayed up till 2 a.m. reading last night. Hence having washed my hair with shower gel this morning, and now not being able to find my words. Poor choices, people. So fear of success. It's shiny though, isn't it?
It's lovely.
And I realised that if success was kind of, you know, just here, then I was almost a fingertip away from being very successful. I kind of just knew. And I don't mean success in like earning tons of money, but just loving what I was doing, really being out in the world. That I would get to a point and I'd have to choose between, you know, do I take this business opportunity or do I spend more time with my kids? Mm-hmm. And that obviously then really pulled on that past stuff around wanting to be a better mum than my mum. Mm-hmm. And that was the work that I had to do around, actually, I still get to choose. If an opportunity comes in, I still get to say yes or no. I still get to prioritise. And so I think I've hit a kind of an even balance. I still kind of mess it up sometimes, but genuine even balance. But it was that the fear of success was, well, if I'm really successful, then I'm going to be put in this position where I want to choose. And actually, I really love my business and my clients, you know, not as much as my kids, but, you know, on a different basis.
Yeah.
It's hugely powerful for me. So I think fear of success is really interesting.
No.
I mean, I just love where this stuff comes from.
It's like so random though, isn't it?
It is.
Like you work all your life to be successful, and then when you're on the brink, it's like, ooh,
maybe I don't want it. I know.
It makes me a bad person. You know, I'm terrible because I don't spend enough time with my children.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so yeah.
It's not, but money, isn't it? People have fear of making money, and I think again that's an interesting one, isn't it? It's like, well, if you've got a skill and you're really good at it, and other people, you know, there's a market value for what you do. Why are you not charging the same market value? It's really interesting, our issues around money.
I've got serious issues around money. I'm working on them, hence the reason James exists. You know, but it's, you inherit it. That kind of whole money doesn't grow on trees, and you know, people with money are all arseholes.
Yeah. And that, do you know, that's a really big one with men.
I don't want to be an arsehole.
Male clients actually are, money makes me an arsehole. Absolutely. I've had to clear that with some men. I think for me, when I did my money issue, I'd been poor. I, grew up really poor. Went into marriages where my partner didn't earn a lot, and we chose for me to stay at home or work or part-time jobs. And so I'd always had this kind of poor thing. And I remember there was times when I'd needed therapy and just literally not been able to afford kind of 50 quid a week. It just, that wasn't possible. And so, of course, as I was intensifying what I was doing and actually scaling up, actually, I don't come cheap. And so I had this kind of, oh my gosh. And we realized it felt like I was leaving myself behind, like anybody like me. And so in the end, we came to this thing that what I would do is effectively, charge the market rate for what I was doing. And then I always have 2 or 3 free or low cost places. So, they're all full all the time. But it meant that I could keep the me's safe, but also allow myself to grow and build my business. And so I love that because actually it means I have such a nice mix of clients, from really different walks of life. And I think that makes me better, keeps my skill set buzzing. But it also means, we can cross-share stories and they get value from each other too. So it's an interesting one, money. And I think that one of the things I found so interesting about my work is you never know where your stuff has come from. And it's never obvious, because it's never about the thing that's happened, it's about the meaning. And so you can go through, I was talking to somebody yesterday and she said to me, my brother and I had the same childhood, same experience, everything. He's really super successful. I'm really not. And I said, well, because he took a meaning from, that childhood scenario of growth, and you took a meaning of kind of being held back and restricted. And it's so fascinating. Like I say, this is why I'm so anti-led models of therapy or coaching, because I'm just like, you never know what has gone on for the client. So if you're trying to, I remember once actually going to relate with a partner, and she said, we're going to do some childhood work. And I said, well, actually, I spent 4 years doing childhood work, so I can tell you my triggers. I can tell you the difficult words. Like, I knew everything. And she said, no, we're going to do this work. And I was like, you know, you're trying to squeeze me into your model. You're not actually listening to what we've come with.
Yeah,
and so I kind of
client-centered, was it?
No, it wasn't very client-centered. And actually, we stopped kind of after 2-3 sessions, because I was like, I don't really need to go back over my childhood again. And if I do, I'll do it with somebody who's skilled enough to know which bits I actually need to go on, rather than a whole, we're going to look at the whole thing again. Yeah. Because it's unnecessary. So, yeah.
It's great. But I think that your free clients probably keep you grounded as well. You know, when you start working with sort of, you know, CEOs and politicians, and you kind of keep in touch with sort of real life as well. But
I guess I just think the CEOs and people are
real people.
They're real people too. So I'm not really fazed by celebrity or anything like that. I think because I just think, you know, we're all naked humans underneath. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. You know, put me in a room with Prince Harry and I'll probably be a bit intimidated, but he is just a person, you know.
He's lush, though. He would make.
He is lovely.
I think he'd probably make you feel happy in terms of.
What are you trying to say?
No. I think he comes across as somebody who's able to listen well and hold that safe psychological space for people.
Yeah, very grounded.
It's just me just projecting.
No, I totally agree. I think it's very grounded.
Yeah.
But
I'm not sure about William, but you know. Sorry, sweetie.
No comment. But it is one of those things, isn't it? When you look at people, about how grounded they are. But I remember when I ran parenting classes, because I ran them as part of an old job myself. I actually ran the same course that I had gone on because it was so good. I just kind of bought the rights to it. And some of the more professional parents, they would mix, you know, obviously. So you had your kind of upper and lower demographics. And one of them said to me, he said, you know, I came on the parenting course really worried about my kids. And he said, I've come off the parenting course, just not worried about my kids at all. And he said it was so useful listening to people who are at the cliff face, as he called it. You know, people whose 11-year-olds are out till kind of 2 o'clock in the morning, the police are being called, etc. And he said, really, I've got these, you know, 2 sort of quite affluent middle-class Cambridge kids, you know, who are fine.
A little bit bratty, but everything's okay.
Yes, exactly, but actually everything's okay. And I think that's really true. So we do take from each other, don't we, actually? And I think that's, again, it's kind of back to that sense of mortality, isn't it? You know, I was moaning about a whole load of stuff that was going on in my life about a couple of months ago on a kind of private Facebook group. And this lovely woman came on and said, wow, you know, you've got amazing resilience to go through all of that stuff at the moment. Hang in there, you know. I kind of did that little, that's great. I needed that kind of little boost. And then 3 days later, she posted about her pancreatitis cancer and, you know, how her therapy wasn't working and whatever. And I did just do that, you know, and you just do that kind of, okay. So, and you know, my stuff is serious and it's valid and it's my life.
Yeah,
but
it's
actually,
your big stuff.
But being reminded somebody's out there actually fighting for their life was a bit like, you know, none of this is going to end up in death, you know. And so I think it is about that being grounded. And you know, when I do value work with people about what is your purpose, what's your mission in life, where are you going, pretty much most people want world peace and harmony, and they just want to be out there being creative and doing their thing, and you know, and just being themselves. That's what we need to be encouraging, really, isn't it?
And it is. It's almost because it's you know, you tick box. We talk about this a lot, don't we? You know, do you want to talk about this bit? 'Cause you know what I'm going to say, don't you?
The checklist.
Yeah.
What's the checklist?
Well, you do what's. It's not an official checklist, obviously, but it's how
your
I
personal
describe
checklists.
A lot of us. I don't know where it comes from, but it's you finish school and then you take a path which is either you do further education, get a job or an apprenticeship. Yeah. Tick that box. And it's not in any particular order necessarily, but then it's, let's say you find a partner, you find a job, property is a big one, children, and they'll come in there in somewhere. And then there's almost a gap between, well, I've done all that now.
Yeah. Get promoted.
Yeah. Retire.
Yeah.
And there's nothing. I know we always talk about, you know, live for the moment and go on holiday, but there's a lot of unfulfilled potential in there. Yeah. Where it's like, well, I've seen it a lot where, and I wonder if that's where midlife crisis comes from, because I've ticked this, I've done this, I've done this. There's like a very much a checklist of, right, I'm productive, I'm progressing through life, I'm doing exactly what I should be doing. And I've kind of done the total opposite, which is just like, right, keep moving, keep changing jobs, keep pivoting. Right, I'm going to move to this country now because I quite fancy it. Why not? And I've seen a lot of unfulfilled. There's a realization almost that, I got married way too young, or I never did travel to Australia or around the world, or I wish I'd gone and tried that when I had an opportunity to go and live in another country, and it's not that they're forced into that, are we? In some ways, you're sheep herded through school, thinking, right, I need to go to further education, or I need to get a job. But then there's something
culturally, I think.
Yeah, you don't.
It's traditional, isn't it? Grow up, get your job, and stay in it for 50
Buy
years.
Buy a house, be tied to one place.
Yeah.
Die.
I think there's a big it's funny what you're saying about middle age, because I think it is that thing where in your 40s people used to start slowing down, whereas I'm just incredible. I mean, most people around me are speeding up, and of course we've all got to work for so much longer anyway. But there's been this big boom, hasn't there, in parents that go off and do the gap year that they never had when their kids go to universities. It's like, off you go to university, we're going around Asia.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's what my sister did. She went off for 8 months, her and her husband, and they went all around the world. And I think people are starting to live into that space now, whereas they weren't before. But you're right, there's still this transition between your kind of old school and that kind of, but this is what you do, and then people going, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go off and do something else.
But people think you're bonkers, don't they?
They do.
It's the wrong. We often talk about it's the wrong measure of success. Success is, in a lot of the more traditional viewpoint, if you've got a job, you have a mortgage, and you've had some sprogs, and you have a career. My son or daughter is successful.
Yeah.
Instead of like being, do you know what? Forget all that. And it's kind of what I say to a lot of people. Don't get married until you're at least 30, because especially if you're with someone, because they will change.
Yes.
So you may find you're actually not with the person you thought you're with. Go and travel, because it's more likely you've got so many more responsibilities, family-wise, children-wise, mortgage-wise, later on. Get it done. Get it out your system. You could say that about not getting married too soon as well. Get that out your system. and just try a lot of different things. So, and it's so we talk about these measures of success, and it's something I don't know that I actively set out to do that, but it was because I wanted to work in a big company in marketing, and I think I wanted to be international. That was what I wanted. Having seen a neighbour who got to travel to Brussels and Helsinki every week, I thought, I need to do that. How can I do that? Because that looks cool. And then, but I don't know. It's easy. Maybe it's this thing of following society, fitting in. So I have to do what everyone else is doing. So I've got to get a property, and it's like, no, you don't have to do that.
You don't have to do it all.
And we talked with a lot of people, don't we, about you shouldn't actually like your job.
Why should you not like it?
People think that, it's
that you shouldn't.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you need to complain about, my boss is horrible.
Yes. It's like, well, I'll go get another job.
But there's never these moments of, I think there's a transition, as you said, from the more traditional to actually something that's more enlightened, where it's, I know millennials get a bad press, but there is more of a movement of, I want to buy into what we're actually doing. There's a lot of companies with bullshit mission statements and values, and it's like, all right,
foosball tables.
Yes.
I don't get what we're doing. So there's,
I guess I think, and I know this has been talked about quite a lot over the last year, is that we have lost our connection with the planet. So I'm very nature orientated. And I'm not like a big hiker or anything, in fact the reverse, but I like to be outside in nature, and I really think we've lost our connection. And there's a lot more books starting to come out, like shamanism's coming up as a
it is, I'm hearing
theory, or do you know what I mean? And people are desperately trying to reconnect, and I think that's really true. Like human connection We're sitting next to each other on desks, emailing each other. I was sitting on the train yesterday, and I normally have great conversations with people on the train, and everybody's on their phone.
Headphones in.
Exactly, headphones in. No one's looking at anyone. It's like I'm quite chatty to complete strangers, and that's a really odd. Exactly, that's a really odd thing to do now. Whereas actually before, you would naturally start conversations with people. I just think it's really sad that we are losing our connection. And I think that's the change, is that it's almost like the world's at this tipping point. And I think, so for me, a big driver of doing my book was exactly what you're saying. It was this tipping point of, people not recognizing who they are on the inside. And so there's a lot of leadership in the world, which is very narcissistic, let's say. And for me, people who are leading in the world need to be healthy on the inside. So that was kind of why I wrote the book. But it is that whole thing about who am I connected to, where's my human contact. And actually, if you take humans away from human contact, and not just passing each other in the office, but really deeply caring, I think we stop being human, actually. And I think that's the shift. But I agree with you. There's a transition. It is the transition between the kind of old traditional, and I think you're right. Millennials get a really bad press, and actually, kind of what they're saying is we need that connection again. And I definitely don't think they've got it all right. I think there's actually a blend of the two is probably what works well. But it is that that measure of success. What is your success? And that's what I say to my clients. This is not about money. So whenever my clients start with me, I say to them they have to write a future them. And I say to them, I need to be able to pick this you up, put it in a desert island, whatever, and you are still that future you. So it's got to be completely internal, not materialistic. And they really struggle. They'll put things like, job whatever, and I'm like, no, okay, back to the drawing board. This is about who you are. That's your level of success, who you are on the inside. Because I think that when you get that success of, I really like me and this is who I am, then you naturally go out into the world and you achieve well anyway. Financially, productivity-wise, happy, everything. The whole thing, I think, comes to you. So success is an interesting measure, isn't it?
It is. And I think defining that is important. And it's like that other quote of, is it you've got two lives? The day you're born and then the day you figure out why.
Honestly, he is an untapped
I can't remember who that was.
A well of quotes.
Einstein,
great, I love it.
Einstein, Mark Twain. I'll have to look that one up.
These down.
We need to get to a point where when our podcasting, we're like on Google as well, like Joe Rogan and people like that. But
just Googling the quotes.
Yeah.
But we almost, maybe it's because of schooling there's a good TED talk from, I think it's Ken Robinson, who talks about the education system is created for the industrial revolution.
Yes, it is, totally.
That's where we have the summers off.
Trying to find people.
For harvest.
Yeah. Go on, children, get you to harvest. Oliver would love it if we do that in the house anyway, to be fair. We grow loads of stuff.
So you're trying to figure out a career to push someone down, when in many ways you should sort of look into, well, my dad was a head teacher, and from his school, it was in a less affluent area, but his main premise, he'd always say, there'll be kids who know I'm not very good at maths, I'm not very good at English, but each of those children left with a sense of purpose. Like, I'm terrible at maths, but I tell you what, no one can tell a joke like I can.
Exactly.
I can make people laugh. I can imitate other people, and that's really what school is part of, is figuring out who am I, what am I quite good at, is that something I'm passionate about and should pursue, and then helping facilitate that to.
I think it's a really interesting point, something I'm really passionate about, because out of my 5 children, I have 2 dyslexics and 2 that are terrible at maths. And I mean terrible at maths. And I think we've always brought them up to see, this is your strength and this is the bit you're not quite so good at. And I didn't go to school a lot as a child. I had, like I say, really weird mum. And I just didn't go. So I went in effectively what would be the end of year 9 now, almost my first formal education in secondary school, probably only spent a couple of years at primary school. So even my general knowledge now can be absolutely shocking. And, so I came out with kind of D's and E's and, F in science, because of course I hadn't done any of the kind of preliminary stuff. And I look at my kids, and my daughter is incredibly bright. But getting her thoughts into language is really hard for her as a dyslexic. And she will do worse, probably a couple of grades worse than her intellectual level because of the GCSE, especially now they've changed it, made it 100%. So we're setting kids up to failure. And I think that there's a brilliant Einstein quote there, actually, isn't it? Something like, if we ask a fish to climb a tree, it will always fail.
Yes.
And I look at my kids and think, they're fishes in very different ways. And we are, like you say, we're setting them up to fail, really. And still trying to push this very academic route.
And it's not for everybody.
And it's not for everyone. And I think when I look at my skill set, it's communication, it's rapport, it's this kind of sixth sense of being able to work out what's going on with people. How do you exam me on that? Do you know what I mean? I can write your case study. But it is that, why are we not strength testing our kids, And I think, if you look at Daniel Priestley's books, he's a business writer, and he says, we're moving into the decades of entrepreneurship, and we should be in schools training our kids to do, entrepreneur. We should change that mindset. And the really interesting thing is, my daughter is doing a business studies GCSE, and I thought, yay, great, she wanted to do it for me. No theory. I was like, how can you teach business studies with literally no practical? Sorry, not theory. No practical. And it's like, do a 5 challenge with them. Here's your 5, go out and make brownies and sell them. Nothing. Literally no practical. And it's just like, well, if we're moving into entrepreneurship, and I see
we are,
and I think I see, some great people who have got amazing business ideas, but they haven't got the business knowledge. They don't understand how to do it, so they fail, not because the idea isn't great, but because they're not skilled. And I think, when I look at, how tiring it is to set up and run your own business, there's all the, for me, my work with clients and all that stuff, but there's also the, I'm running a business and, hello, this is me and your marketing and all this stuff. And actually, I'm very driven to learn. Learning is something I love doing, but it's overwhelming, isn't it? So why are we not teaching even elements of that in school? Yeah. So I think school-wise, we're massively behind our culture. It's crazy.
It's not kept up with what's actually needed skill set-wise for what is actually happening.
No, I harp on about this this Edelman intelligence survey in America a couple of years ago. Basically said by the year 2027, over half of Western workers will be freelancers.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're not teaching our kids.
No,
and
that
is, I can't do the maths because I'm not very good. 8 years' time.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And also, but we are still setting them up. We're not teaching strength mindset. No. So I have with my kids. So my daughter loves her dyslexia. She just says, it makes me really original. She says the word cliffed, because she says otherwise you fall off the end of the word. So she's very visual.
I love it.
Yeah, so she calls it her Lucy language. That's what she calls it, because when she's tired she'll muddle her language. So she really lives into it, and she knows that she has skills in many other areas. And the same with my son. I'm like, okay, so maybe you're not, maths is not your strength, but look at all of these. I mean, he could be an architect. He's an incredible drawer. So it's like, why are we not saying to kids it's okay to have a weaker thing? Why is that not okay? But also, why are we not bringing in things like, actual business studies practicals, hands-on? We've actually, in some respects, we've gone worse, because we've gone from modular GCSE system where at least there was some level of, practical and being able to study at home, coursework, etc. We've kind of gone old school. Which all of that talent. Kids, well, it is, and all of that talent for people who can't sit and remember everything they need to remember for however many years. You're just wiping out confidence very, very quickly. So if I had my time again, I think I'd go Montessori or something with my kids.
I think I'm very good at remembering something for a short period of time. So I was always very good at exams.
Yes, cram it.
No,
get it.
And I literally don't know it. Yeah, it's you're teaching people how to remember stuff, not actually understand what the stuff is.
And I think, I watched with mine in year 6, they were all hot-housed to pass the SATs. And the teacher in year 7 said, he said, is that what they're doing? Because I'd said, actually they've been doing, with my son, they were like doing maths with him every week for a year. And eventually they went, okay, he's just never going to learn his times tables. It's just never going to happen.
You don't need to know them. There's calculators.
Yes, never need to add anything in your head.
No, why would you need to? You have a phone in your hand.
Well, and that's the thing, isn't it? With the phone in your hand. But it is that thing of, they were saying, well, they get into year 7 and then actually what happens is the grades drop down again. And I think there's an interesting thing with the millennials that, they're amazingly tech savvy and they rise up and they get to CEO level. And then they don't actually have the skill set, not to put them down. But I was talking to a guy in the US that I was interviewing, and he had run this huge tech company. And I said to him, I don't believe in, there's five tips to be a leader. I think it is all inside out stuff. I said, but if you had to choose, what would it be? And all his things were people related. Yeah. And I said to him afterwards, do you realise that you've just named all people stuff? And it was things like educate your staff, work with them in the beginning, this stuff. And he said, I think that's because I sucked at it. And I thought that's a really interesting reflection, isn't it? So he came out of the business because he was burnt out. He wasn't managing his stress levels. He was under 30. And he was just saying, I completely sucked at managing people. And I do think there's something in you kind of get that through experience. I know as a 46-year-old, my wisdom around how to manage people, what life's going to throw at you, etc., just is more than it was at 30. And at 30, I thought I knew everything. I'd been, married, and I was in my second marriage. I'd been divorced. I'd got 5 kids by that point. I'd had miscarriage. I thought everything had been thrown at me. And now I look back and think, oh my gosh, actually I was still, even at 30, quite a young mindset. So I love these ideas where, you have incubators that are bringing both together. Those kind of, 50-year-old people kind of going, kind of doesn't really happen like that. And the millennials going, hey, but have you seen this and this new way of thinking? Yeah. It's very powerful for the world, I think.
Definitely.
I was just reflecting on...
it's just gone. It's like, head gone.
There's a charity called the Pie Project that was one of our guests, podcast 14, isn't it?
We were introduced on podcast 4, Chris Beavers.
Oh, yes. Yeah. then we interviewed the founder, Amar Mirza, set up the Pie Project, primary inspiration through enterprise. And it's this link to the campaign, isn't it, of primary to prosperity, where the first stage... We were making these foam airplanes, which I really loved because I did exactly the same when I was 8 or 9, seeing what kind of distance you can throw them. And then the next challenge was a coding challenge. So it was a bit like the game, it's Coding Combat, which is like a bit, I call it the Legend of Zelda, where you've got to move a character around the room, but you've got to use Python commands. So again, practical skills, planning, learning from your mistakes, that sort of thing. So we're moving into the next stage now, whereby each school gets, or the class gets, £100 as a loan, and then you have to come up and create a product or a service to market and sell, and then you get to keep all the profits, and then the top 5 schools get prizes. And it's exactly what we talked about. It's something that's actually, it's not that scary to set up a business. I did that when I was in year 5.
Because I did it.
Yeah, we've done it.
Virgin do a similar thing. So they do the £5 challenge, and so everybody in, I think it's year 6, gets £5 and goes off. And it was quite interesting because I'm in quite a little affluent village in Cambridge, and what actually happened was that the teachers hadn't coincided on what the rules were. So some of the children were told that donations were acceptable to their business. Well, I don't know about your business.
No, donations are acceptable.
Yes,
anyone
exactly.
listening,
Anyone who wants to donate,
money,
that's fine.
Send me some.
But I can't say that people come up to me and go, hey, I'm just going to randomly donate to your business. So what actually happened was, obviously lots of them did cakes or lollies or whatever. And I was there on that day helping out in school, and it was all in the playground, and they were all doing their ventures. And you basically just had some parents who had donated, 100 cupcakes to the addition of, the £5 challenge, whereas I'm driving my kids around Tesco's, Asda and Sainsbury's to work out which milkshake is so cheap they can get that and the 4 pint of milk to make the milkshake to then to put back in. And it was really frustrating because actually I just said, you're not showing these kids anything. Well, actually,
and corruption, and
I mean, it was literally it was bored parents at home, if I'm honest, and also it was the affluent parents. So you've got kids. I grew up. My mum was not on call. She never came to parents' evenings. We didn't have a kitchen because my mum was a hoarder. And a very poor lifestyle. My mum would have never just gone, hey, basically let's win this, and that's what it was. It became parental competition for those parents to win it, and really doing their children a disservice. So I remember the summer after I did a £10 challenge with my daughter because I thought it was such a good idea, actually, really, really good idea. And she would cook brownies and then paid my partner to take them into work. He then sold them, brought back the profits, and she was just had this chain of brownie making. And she made like £50 in the end from this fiver, from the tenner. And, that was the whole point. And I wouldn't do anything without money. I was literally like, I won't turn the oven on, you got to buy your own milk, literally even printing on the thing. I was like, it's penny a sheet to photocopy. And it was showing her, and I guess because I have my business, it was like, well, this is where I'm doing that bit of advertising, this is where I'm doing that bit of marketing, this is how I have to go and build connections. And it's showing that. But I think every kid in school should be doing something like that. But like a proper, no parental influence
it's
at all.
Hard, isn't it? It's hard.
Yeah.
Rightio. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, Mary, how marry rhymes with will you marry me?
It does.
You got that sunk in my head. How do I manage that one? How would they get in touch with you?
So there's my website, which is www.mary-williams.com. You can find me under LinkedIn, under Mary Williams, the Mind Architect. I'm also on Facebook under Williams Thinks, and on Twitter, although to be honest, I'm not that present on Twitter, and Williams Thinks too. So the best way is website or LinkedIn or phone, which is 07932 007 328.
Oh, wow.
I know. It's got Bond in there. Did you notice? 007.
I got 004 at the end of mine. I felt really sad.
Yeah, I was childishly excited when I got 007. I'm a bit Bond.
Well, thank you ever so much for coming in to see us today. It's been lovely to talk to you, meet you in real life.
Yeah, it's lovely to meet you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mary.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone for listening. Check out all the show notes at inspirationnorth.com. Join us again for the next episode when we'll be chatting to another inspirational person. If you like this, subscribe and tell your friends. If you didn't like this, subscribe anyway.
And tell everybody.